This program is brought to you by LegendaryStrength.com. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. It is recommended you talk to your qualified health professional before making any changes to your exercise plan, diet, or prescription medication use. Legendary Strength is not responsible for any claims made during this program. Hello, it's Logan Christopher from Legendary Strength, and I'm quite excited about the podcast today because it's something that's been, in the works for a while. And I'm talking about I did a little experiment with myself where I changed my diet fairly radically. I ate for 30 days only raw vegan food. Now, this is not exactly how I normally eat, which is mostly healthy, and I do normally eat a good amount of raw food and definitely a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables, but I'm also definitely omnivorous. I eat lots of eggs, lots of meat, have dairy on occasion. We'll start with what first led me to taking on this experiment. Well, if you listen to some of the previous podcasts, I've been going to the Longevity Now conference for quite some time, and a big portion of that conference, a lot of the people there are raw vegan. That's kind of the genesis of where David Wolf came from, the whole raw food lifestyle and everything like that. It's definitely grown and incorporates a lot more than just that, but that is a portion of it. So having been studying David Wolf and all his material for quite a few years now, I've definitely incorporated a lot of that into my regular lifestyle. But besides a week, maybe, I don't know, that was probably like 8 years ago or something where I went raw vegan. I really hadn't done it, just, gone all out with it for a period of time. So I decided I just wanted to set up this experiment and see how I felt with it, see what new things I could learn from it, and basically just to run it as an experiment. So that's why I started this experiment. Now, if you're not familiar with raw vegan food, raw meaning that nothing is cooked. Nothing can go above, I believe it's like 118 degrees. And the whole reasoning behind raw food, is that if you heat things up, you destroy, the biggest thing would be the enzymes in the food. And we need these enzymes to help with digestion. And if you don't get these enzymes with your food, then you're using your body's own stores of enzyme. And eventually, after years and years of eating cooked food, these begin to get depleted, and that can lead to health problems. So that's one of the biggest things. Also with cooking food, a lot of times the other nutrients, depending how you cook it and all that, they will get destroyed or chemically changed and won't be the same. So those are the reasons behind the raw food. Vegan being, some people say that animal products and definitely killing animals, all that is bad. So I just decided to run with this experiment. So let's talk about how I actually went about doing it. Like I said before, I definitely incorporated a lot of this in my regular lifestyle. A lot of what I ate during this period was shakes. I make a lot of smoothies and shakes that include a whole bunch of superfoods, a whole bunch of raw foods, and also different herbal components combined with that. So this wasn't really much of a change for me, except I had to focus on making sure that it was all raw ingredients along with that. Besides that, I actually had a couple, but I also purchased a new one. I think just one new one, a raw food, and not a cookbook, but raw food preparation book. If you look through these, you can really, if you've never experienced raw food before, never been to a restaurant, they can really make all kinds of different foods just using completely raw ingredients, and it's pretty amazing when you have like a raw food dessert where the crust is made with Brazil nuts and stuff, and the whole topping, it tastes really good. So anyway, I got one of these books, and that allowed me to expand more and play with different things rather than just eating, salads and smoothies and pieces of fruit all day. Also, luckily, where I live in Santa Cruz, there happens to be one restaurant that has not quite half its menu, but it serves a lot of raw food. So when I didn't feel like preparing something or just wanted to go and grab something, that was available here. That's not available everywhere. Definitely in bigger cities, there's actually a couple different options, like down in LA and New York. But smaller towns will not have raw food restaurants. So that is something that definitely helped me in being able to do this, because I do tend to eat out a fair amount in my daily life. Me and my girlfriend enjoy going out, so having that there as well. But besides that, it was just The basic thing in order to actually get through this process, if you were to decide you wanted to do it yourself, would be to know how you're actually going to go about and doing it. So I basically had an idea of different meals I could plan throughout the day, different meals I'd have, eating just fruit for some meals, eating a very large salad. Typically for dinner would be some type of raw food that was more prepared. I'll talk about some of the things in there. So if you know how you're going to actually get through it, then it's pretty easy to do. And this holds true for any sort of diet or change in diet that you're adhering to yourself. One of the biggest things for people is willpower. And to be honest, this actually was not an issue at all for me. And let me tell you why that was. It's not because I am so tremendously strong-willed and all that, but I think what it comes down to is when I make a decision to do something, I'm going to do it. And so I decided, it wasn't like this was on a whim, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, and it wasn't a true commitment, but I said, okay, I'm going to do this 30-day raw challenge. I know how I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And as soon as I had made that decision, then the thought of just dropping it for whatever reason didn't enter my mind. It wasn't like, oh, oh, it's been one day and it's so hard, I'm just going to go back, scrape everything I did. So part of it was making the decision. Also, along with that, which really again made it super easy for me to go through this whole process, was I had said I was going to do this on the podcast before, on some other of my online channels. So having that public commitment in there made it, once again, really easy for me to do, because if I wasn't able to follow through on this, then people may say, oh, you weren't able to do that and you're weak and all that sort of thing. So just having that, I think I would have done fine with this even without that, but that definitely stacked the odds in my favor. So if you are going to make a change for your own life, something along these lines, change in your diet, committing yourself publicly can definitely be a useful tool. Now, there are some drawbacks to this. Of course, if you do fail, then you will face embarrassment, but that is why it propels you forward. But really get to the point where if you decide to do something, that's the thing. It's a true decision and commitment to do something. It's not some like wishy-washy, oh yeah, I'm thinking about doing that. Had I done that, then this definitely would not all have happened. So there were a couple of challenges through the month of June when I did this 30 days of eating raw vegan. The biggest challenge being that I was on the road traveling twice, one to attend a workshop up in Oregon and the other to put on my own workshop and attend another one down in the LA area. So traveling, what I typically do when I travel is I don't prepare any food. I just go out and eat, or maybe I'll hit up a grocery store so I can get, a health food store so I can get some healthy food. But I don't worry about it all that much and just end up doing what I feel like doing in the moment. Now, being a raw vegan and not being able to go out, for instance, in Medford, Oregon, there definitely isn't any raw food restaurants. I had to prepare food ahead of time. So I stocked an ice chest full of the different foods I needed. One of the big things with the raw vegan diet is you need to be sure to get enough calories. So this was a big issue for me, especially since, I'm already something of a small guy, so I wasn't seeking to lose weight. I did lose some, and we'll talk about that later, but I wasn't trying to lose weight with this diet. I was just seeing how I'd feel on it. So I wanted to be sure to bring things that even if I couldn't get any other food, would be able to get enough calories from my food. So one of the things I like to bring, I brought on both these trips, was a jar of coconut butter. Now, coconut butter is slightly different from the coconut oil. It has the fibers and some of the sugars in with that, and it tastes really good. It's great to just eat straight. Coconut oil is great itself, but the coconut butter tastes really good. So some of my meals, I would honestly just eat that. Just eat a couple spoonfuls of that, and it has the medium chain triglycerides, which the MCTs, which are great for energy. So I typically have a lot of coconut oil, coconut butter in my regular diet, usually in the form of smoothies, but here I was just eating it plain. I also had a jar of honey, raw honey. Now, some people might say, hey, honey's not vegan. That didn't even occur to me when I started this. I mean, I stopped taking fish oil and all that, but even among a lot of vegans, like honey is fine to take. So, if you want to say it wasn't truly vegan, then that's fine. But raw vegan with the possible exception of honey in there. But once again, a good quality raw honey has tons of enzymes. Yes, there's a lot of sugar in it, but I don't really have a problem with sugar, so I was fine able to eat some tablespoons full of this. And of course, then tons of nuts and seeds. Definitely in the beginning, as I was starting this, as my body had to shift from having a lot denser meals with cooked foods and all that, and meats and everything, to going over to raw vegan. Having a lot of nuts and seeds was instrumental in making that transition. By the end of the 30 days, I really needed far less with the nuts and seeds. And I definitely went overboard in the beginning. And I'll talk about one of the symptoms I think I had from that. Because eating too many nuts and seeds were really heavy, really dense foods, and you probably shouldn't be eating handfuls and handfuls and bags of everything. But when I was traveling, it was really good to do. And really good to have those. Then I'd also go to the store and, get a bag of lettuce. I like buying a jar of sauerkraut if I could, and then, eat half the jar in the evening. So I was able to still keep this up while traveling. And even when I went out with friends or when I was out there on the road, going out to eat with other people, I would just have my own thing. I wouldn't eat anything at the restaurant unless we happened to go to a raw food restaurant, which happened one time, besides being in my hometown. But then I would just eat my own thing either before or after, and then just be able to enjoy the company, and I wasn't pressured or anything. I had to explain what I was doing, but again, it wasn't much of a challenge to be like, ooh, I really want to order something now, but I can't because of this. Once again, wasn't a challenge. It wasn't an issue of willpower because I had the decision and commitment to follow through with this. So part of my reason for doing this experiment was to see the new things I would come up with. What could I learn through the process of doing this? Like I said, a lot of things I'd done before, like shakes and everything, but I did come up with some new things with that. One of which was chia seeds. Now, I've definitely been eating chia seeds for a while, but I came up with so many more uses and ways to take them, and now take them a lot more regularly as well. Chia seeds are a phenomenal food. It was actually a staple food in some of the American cultures, because there's so much nutrition in such tiny little seeds, and you can eat them. If you read, I think the book is Born to Run or something, they talk about that. There's also some other stories about the American peoples. They would, 2 tablespoons or something of chia seeds, they said, would last a person all day long. Now, I'm not quite there yet, but it is a powerful food. It's also really high in omega-3s. Now, with the omega-3s, it's important to note that there's a difference between omega-3s found in vegetarian sources, like the chia seeds, also flax seeds, hemp seeds, that sort of thing, and omega-3s found in, for instance, fish oil. And also, if you have quality grass-fed beef, for instance, it's a higher amount of omega-3s than omega-6s. The difference is that in the vegetarian sources, it's ALA. In the non-vegetarian sources, it's EPA and DHA, and those are the really 2 important ones that we need. Now, ALA can convert. It goes down the chain to EPA and then finally to DHA. There's another step in there, DPA, if I'm correct on that one. The problem is most people don't efficiently convert these over. However, while I was actually on this experiment, that I heard about this study there saying that if people don't have any sources of the fish oil, so they're not getting any EPA or DHA in their diet, their body will actually shift over and be able to convert that ALA better into the sources. Now, what would have been optimal had I done with this experiment was get some blood work done before and get blood work done after. However, I didn't want to spend the several $100s it would take to do that, so I just am more basing this on how I felt and all that. But it was interesting to note that study came to me, or I heard about that as I was doing this process. One of the symptoms I had while I was going through this, and it was pretty much one of the only things that happened, was my lips got really chapped. I've noticed this happen before certain times, and I usually equate it like when I'm traveling and I don't have enough omega-3s. So what was happening was, in the start, I didn't have as much of the chia seeds, but I noticed this happening and said, okay, what can I do to do it? I definitely needed to cut down on all the other nuts and seeds, because those they have a lot of fat in them, and unfortunately it's mostly omega-6s. So the important thing with omega-6s and omega-3s is the ratio between the two. And you want less 6s to 3s. So the lower you can get that ratio down. Some people say 3 to 1, 2 to 1, even 1 to 1 is optimal. And that's omega-6s to omega-3s. So a 3 to 1 ratio would be you're having 3 times as many omega-6s in your diet as omega-3s. Now with the standard American diet, it's typically like 20 to 1, which is way far out of whack, and there you would definitely want to do something about it, hence supplementing with fish oil and that sort of thing. So I had these chapped lips, and just for whatever reason I usually equated that to the omega-3 deficiency. So I tried cutting down on the other nuts and seeds. For instance, I was eating a lot of almonds and sunflower seeds, and I still had a good amount, but I really upped what I was taking with chia seeds. So I was either blending them in my shakes, I was just mixing them in water, and you could make like a chia porridge, which actually tastes really good. You add some fruit, some other things in with it. Just mixing them in water and then drinking it. It's like a thick, when chia seeds are in water, they gel up into like a mucilage type thing. It's really interesting stuff. So like I was saying, I played around with chia seeds a whole bunch more, and by the end I needed to rely less on the nuts and seeds, the other nuts and seeds, and just was regularly having every single day quite a few tablespoons of chia seeds, and it seemed to work out real well for me. Another new thing that I picked up was getting raw nori, but they actually have it in those sheets like they use for sushi. Typically it's toasted in sushi, but you can get it raw, and just wrapping up different vegetables or things like avocado, or making like a raw pate type thing, and doing all sorts of different things with these wraps, which actually taste really good, and something I plan to do in the future. Really simple to do, but it can taste really good. So that was one other new thing that I picked up along it. And there's some other small things, but those were some of the main ones I got. So the huge use of chia seeds, and the use of the seaweed to make wraps with. You could also use things like huge green leaves like collard leaves and make wraps with that sort of thing. So those were the two main things I'm going to definitely continue with as I move forward with my diet. And there are many other new meals and new preparations of food, some that work better than others. Let's talk a little bit more about what happened during these 30 days. I already mentioned that my chapped lips, that would be basically one of the only symptoms I had, if anything, and that really by the end was something I had taken care of. It was pretty bad during the middle, but I started dealing with it in what I thought might help, and it seemed to work. So I think that for me, whatever reason, chapped lips is a sign of omega-3 deficiency, and I now know how to work on it even without having fish oil. Another thing that happened was I lost about 8 to 10 pounds of weight while on this diet. Once again, I wasn't even trying to lose weight, so I was really consuming as much food as I wanted to do. But when you cut out a lot of different food groups from your diet, really with any diet, if you cut out something, people tend to lose weight. So here I was cutting out all sorts of grains and breadstuffs. I was eating raw soaked oats, so there was a little bit of grain in my diet, but I think the body treats that a little differently than, for instance, eating a piece of bread. I was cutting out all meat, all dairy, so large groups of different foodstuffs, so it was no wonder that I didn't lose weight on it. It now being 3 days since I have stopped eating raw vegan, I've gained about 2 of those pounds back, so I figure I'll get back to my normal weight, about 185, in no time. So actually being down about 175 is the skinniest I've been for quite some time. So that was one thing that happened. What happens a lot with me is my body, if I eat not the best foods ever, my body will try to get rid of that sort of thing. So with anytime I have dairy and also a lot of processed grains like bread and that sort of stuff, my body tends to produce mucus from those foods, and then I'm blowing my nose throughout the morning. So not having those foods at all, my body still seemed to get rid of some. I don't know if it was based on certain foods, but it tended to clear out all mucus, and I wasn't having that happen as much as when I'm eating other not so good foods, what I know my body doesn't like as much. Now, for the most part, I really felt the same. it really was not a big change in my body. One thing that I tend to notice is the healthier you are, the less you'll seem to be you'll seem to notice things that are, healthy for you or that change in a different way. For instance, taking certain herbal products. If you are really, I don't want to say sick, but just on the standard American diet, that sort of thing, and you take something that's so powerful that gives you so much nutrition you've never had it before, you're likely to feel that. But if you generally are doing things like that, like taking a bunch of herbal products like I already am, and you do what should be a fairly dramatic change in diet, like switching to raw vegan completely for a month, I really didn't feel much of a difference. My energy was just about the same. It's always pretty high. My workouts were fine. I may have felt a little more fatigue on some of them than others, but for the most part, it was really the same. It's hard to say on that one. I'll have to continue experimenting to see if that's the case. But really, overall, sleep didn't change. Bowel movements, all that was good during the entire time. So really, for me, not much of a change when I was doing this. If someone was 100 pounds overweight and eating the standard American diet and switched to a 30-day raw food diet, you can bet they would probably have some more significant symptoms than I had. So after 30 days of this, that was just planned out. I had no intention of continuing this for the long term. I had to then break the diet, and having my body just now accustomed to the raw vegan food, I knew I shouldn't just launch into foods that were far different. So I broke it in somewhat slowly. The first meal I happened to have, I went to a restaurant and had a Cobb salad. So it was, once again, it's a base of raw salad greens, but it had some egg on it, had some chicken and bacon, and my stomach felt a little weird while I was eating that, but at the same time, I was kind of craving the meat, so it felt like on one side it was a little awkward for it to be digesting that, but on the other side it really wanted to eat a little more. Another meal not shortly after that, but a little later, was a bunch of eggs. Once again, felt just fine with this one. The recent thing that I actually ended up having yesterday, which was the first one where I felt really badly afterwards, was I had a burger and fries. Now this is a burger joint that has grass-fed patties. It's still a white bread bun, but specifically I felt it with the fries. That seemed to be what affected me more. Just the fried food, that was really a kind of put a damper on how I felt after that. I even had some ice cream after that and really didn't feel bad. So I'm back to, I can eat anything and not have any real ill effects, except that fried food really didn't work with it. So I'm just continually still experimenting here 3 days afterward. But for the most part, it wasn't a huge shift, and I could pretty easily get back to eating things that, I don't typically eat a lot of fries or ice cream, but just eating out to see how my body would feel from these things. So going forward, like before, except probably even more so now, I'll continue to do a lot of raw foods. For instance, this morning I made a shake that I typically made while on the diet. Then I just did my workout a little while ago and had another shake, and this was once again some raw vegan shake, except I also threw in some raw eggs to it too, which I like to do in my shakes as well. So adding a little bit, so it's raw vegetarian but not raw vegan, still all raw, and it tastes great, and I enjoy it. This is something that has worked really well for me in the past, and something that for a large part I plan to do more or less as I go forward. Is throughout the day I'll continue to eat basically raw food, not necessarily vegan like with the eggs, but eating raw food throughout the day, and then have a larger meal at night with some cooked food. So usually a salad at night, then some sort of cooked vegetables, then usually, I like beef, so steak or burgers, something like that. And that works out really well for me. So that keeps my energy really high. So, if you eat a big meal right after lunch, how you tend to want to go to sleep after that, I tend to feel that. But if I keep my diet fairly light throughout the day with raw foods are a great way to keep the diet light, then at night I'm able to do it. It's sort of the whole it's different than the warrior diet, but in some ways inspired by that. So I'm still getting a good amount of calories during the day. I'm definitely, upping my uh, insulin from the fruit or honey, different things in the shake, but it also has a lot of fat, a lot of protein involved with them, and once again, all the different herbal components that I tend to put in with my shakes as well. So I'm really packing a whole bunch of things in during the day and then a bigger meal as I go forward. Something that I happened to do during this experiment was I got the garden, my first ever, my own garden set up. So I'm growing some vegetables, just some pretty simple stuff right now. Been able to eat some of the lettuce already, and it's great to just be able to go outside, pick some different herbs or some lettuce. We'll have a lot of tomatoes coming in soon, but to be able to have that really, really fresh and raw food straight off the vine or straight off the leaf. So I'm going to be able to have more of my own homegrown food as I move forward. And I'll definitely be incorporating a lot of the eggs and meat back into my diet. I guess for the most part, I do eat paleo, even though I don't think of myself much like that. I probably have more fruit than is typically recommended on a paleo diet, but I know for myself, dairy doesn't work that well for me. Eggs work great. I love eggs. I'll eat them raw, I'll eat them cooked, all sorts of different ways, all kinds of different meat, fish, fowl, all that. But breads and that sort of thing, grains, like I typically don't eat all that much of. I have no problems if I do. I will have, some whole grain breads at certain times, or cook rice, quinoa, that sort of thing. And for me, I think that's fine, and I plan on continuing doing that. But I guess for a large part, I do sort of eat the paleo way, just as a typical diet. But one of the most important things, and I do want to make sure you get this too, is just how you eat is one part, but really including superfoods and super herbs, I think you can take your health to another level. I sincerely believe that, especially when you get into like the Chinese tonic herbs, and there's these similar sort of tonic herbs in every different herbal system throughout the world, South American, Indian, or Ayurvedic, that sort of thing. These really powerful herbs that are for promoting a superior level of health. And I think even possibly more so than diet. Like my brother was just investigating more into Shilajit that we're selling at Superman Herbs. Super powerful stuff. And he was saying what his research was saying, that even if you eat crappy food, but you take Shilajit with it, the Shilajit will help you to actually get the nutrition from that food much better than if you just ate that food alone. It helps deliver all those things into the cells and mitigate the toxic effects that possibly come with that food. So Shilajit by itself makes your diet automatically better, no matter how clean or not clean you're already eating. So just important things like that, why don't you want to be on this #1 herb probably in the world and take a good quantity of it? And that's something I've been doing both as raw vegan and now as a not so much raw vegan. So I hope you've learned something. I know I definitely did going through this experiment. In the future, I'll maybe doing some more 30-day diet experiments, but right now just eating whatever I want because I can, and I'm enjoying that. So I hope you learned a thing or two from this. And if you have any more questions specifically on some of the topics or areas I brought up on this, I'd love to hear them. That's going to wrap it up for this podcast. I'll talk to you on the next one.